The SAJA boys, together with the Huntrix girls, are without a doubt the most iconic characters in K-pop. Demon hunters. But did you know that even after the final battle, they might not actually be dead? Yep, that possibility is real. And there's evidence that could change everything. The return. If you paid close attention while watching the movie, you probably noticed that in the final scene, both Romance and Baby SAJA were never actually hit by the Huntrix. And the strangest part? They didn't turn into smoke like Mystery and Abby did. That's right, my friends. Everything points to the fact that they're still intact, apparently breathing the same air as us. In other words, while everyone thought they had vanished forever, it looks like they decided to take a little vacation in the human world before any cosmic drama kicked in. And that opens the door to some pretty wild theories. Did they stay behind just to plot an epic revenge against the Hunters? Or are they just enjoying human life, eating popcorn and sipping coffee while planning their grand comeback? One thing's for sure, if they do return, it's not going to be the same as before. Expect upgrades, new powers, and of course that sarcastic humor we all love to hate. And between us, just picture the scene. They show up quietly, pretending everything's normal, and then suddenly start creating chaos in style. Romance with his smooth charm, Baby SAJA with his mischief, and all of us watching wide-eyed, unable to believe they actually escaped their own destruction. So here's the big question. Are we ready for the most unexpected and funniest comeback of the entire series? Because one thing's certain, folks, when the SAJA boys decide to return, the story isn't going to hold back on surprises, and it'll definitely make us laugh hard and maybe sweat nervously too. Jinu without memory. A lot of people believe Jinu is going to come back, but without his memory, in other words, he doesn't remember anything about what happened during his last encounter with Rumi. The good news is that his soul wasn't destroyed, only released. So technically, he's still out there, drifting around like a lost ghost, or maybe just taking a basic cosmic nap, totally unaware that he's about to dive into the biggest storyline of his life. It's worth remembering that right at the beginning of the movie, Jinu's family is attacked by demons, and they end up handing over their souls to the Hunters, but they stay alive. And that's where the super intriguing theory comes in. What if what happened caused him to lose all memory of recent events? Without those memories, he could become the perfect weapon, easy to manipulate, ready to fight against the Huntrix without even realizing he's helping the enemy. Now just imagine the scene. Jinu shows up totally confused, not knowing who's friend or foe, and suddenly finds himself in the middle of a battle. He stumbles around, takes down enemies by accident, cracks some unintentional jokes, and before you know it, everyone's standing there in shock at the chaos he's causing. On top of that, if he slowly starts regaining his memories, each lost piece could turn into a secret weapon against the villains. So the real question is, are we ready to see Jinu return? This time clumsy and even more dangerous? Revenge. Since Romance and Baby SAJA most likely didn't go down to the underworld and stayed in the human world instead, a pretty interesting theory popped up. What if this was all part of Guima's plan, letting them destabilize Hoon Moon from the inside out? By keeping those two around in the human world, he could still indirectly influence events, messing with the plans without having to face them head-on. Some fans even believe Mystery tagged along with them. Sadly, Abby couldn't act directly at that moment, since he was already locked in an advanced fight with Mira. Now, the fate of Romance and Baby SAJA is in their own hands. They can either keep following orders and support Guima's plan, acting as strategic pawns in his game of manipulation, or they can turn against him, seeking revenge for everything the villain put them through. This choice brings in a massive layer of tension and unpredictability, because their next moves could completely flip the story's direction, shaking both the human world and the underworld. So the question is, will the SAJA boys switch sides and join the Huntrix to help the Hunters finally take down Guima? At the end of the day, this theory shows that, even outside the underworld, the characters aren't inactive. They've got free will, strategic influence, and the potential to stir up either chaos or change, depending on which path they decide to follow. All that's left is to wait and see if they'll act with loyalty, rebellion, or maybe a bit of both. making the next chapter of the story even more intense. Before you keep watching the reasons why the SAJA boys didn't die and are set to return in the second movie, drop a comment down below saying, "Return." Pink glitter effect. Let's dive into something a bit deeper, the so-called pink glitter effect. To understand it, we need to go back to the beginning of the movie, when the Huntrix are being tricked by their own flight crew on the plane. That's when a very curious situation happens. When the hunters attack the flight attendant, she falls into the underworld, shaking with fear because she knows she'll have to face her boss, the king of demons. But then something interesting happens. Guima decides to end her life, and instantly, nothing is left but ashes. This detail might carry a much bigger meaning. Maybe demons aren't actually being killed, but only banished from the real world through some kind of magic. In other words, when a demon is struck by one of the Huntrix's weapons, they don't vanish forever. They're simply sent back to the underworld. In the end, the pink glitter effect shows us that nothing is really what it seems. In the Huntrix universe, the magical weapons only banish demons back to the underworld. Banishment. A super curious detail shows up when the Huntrix chase the SAJA boys inside the men's bathhouse. They go all in, attacking the demons with everything they've got, take some of them down, and then leave. But then an old man shows up, saying that this is a space reserved for men and they shouldn't be there. Now here's the contradiction. The same demon they just destroyed shows up again and steals the old man's soul. In other words, even after brutal attacks from the hunters, demons can return through some loophole, showing us that nothing is really over. That leads us to think there's a big chance we'll see the SAJA boys again, or maybe some evil villain back on stage, bringing chaos with style and, who knows, a few unexpected tricks. In Jinu's case, it's also very possible that he'll return. Those who were struck by the Huntrix's weapons weren't truly killed. They were only banished to the underworld and can come back through another loophole. But the big question is, could this be part of Guima's plan? And what's going to happen with Romance and Baby who stayed in the human world? They didn't turn into smoke, which suggests they're still around, hiding, watching, and waiting for the right moment to strike. Another interesting detail about the demon's banishment is that Mira and Zoe always say they're sending demons back to the underworld, but never once do they say they're killing them. And that reveals something essential. The only one capable of truly exterminating a demon is Guima. That's why everyone is terrified of him and respects his power. He doesn't just defeat them physically, he dominates with supernatural authority. When we piece all of this together, we realize something fascinating. Brutal attacks, powerful magic, and the pink glitter effect all prove that nothing is ever final. Every character can return, every demon can find a loophole, and every soul that seemed lost can turn into an unexpected weapon. Death and disappearance aren't absolute endings. They're just transitional chapters, open doors for new conflicts, alliances, and surprises. Just imagine the chaos this could unleash. Jinu returning without memory, the SAJA boys stirring up trouble, Romance and Baby hiding out in the human world. Every scene gets layers of suspense and anticipation, and a simple battle can turn into an unpredictable spectacle full of action, drama, and subtle humor. And now is the perfect time for you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you won't miss any updates. Final battle. One curious point that caught attention, but that very few people actually question, is this. How did Jinu manage to give his soul to Rumi? In the final scene during their encounter, he says that she was the one who set him free. This happens because Guima controls all demons through shame. Since Jinu finally broke free of that control, he was no longer afraid to show who he really was. He realized that his past mistakes didn't make him evil, and by choosing love over shame, he was able to give his soul away. This could mean he was granted a second chance. After all, he was human, and he didn't end up in the underworld because he died, but rather as part of the magical process. At no point in the movie is it mentioned that he died in human life. That detail could also explain the disappearance of some people, the ones on the wanted posters. Maybe that's why they never left their bodies behind. Another interesting point is the behavior of Baby SAJA and Romance. They didn't run away. In reality, they were just following protocol that Guima sent to them telepathically. After all, the villain didn't expect to lose control over Jinu that night, and he knew Jinu might give up his soul. To prevent other demons from doing the same, Baby and Romance simply left, keeping the safety of the plan intact. And there's one more curious detail. When Mystery vanishes, he just evaporates. That means he didn't die or get banished. He simply disappeared, the same way he did during his first appearance. In other words, the final battle left several characters with uncertain fates, showing that nothing is ever truly final in the Hunters universe. Rainbow Hoon Moon. Celine's big plan was to conjure the golden Hoon Moon, but in the end, what Rumi actually created was the rainbow. That raises an interesting question. Why couldn't Rumi carry out the plan of the former hunter? The answer lies in the fact that she isn't fully human. If she had tried to conjure the golden one, she would have been banished, losing her powers completely and disappearing from the human world. Because of this, she had to create something entirely new. The rainbow of acceptance and balance. When Rumi's secret was revealed, she had a tough conversation with Celine and ended up renouncing the plan of the Golden Hoon Moon because she no longer believed in its purpose. In other words, she not only strayed from the script that had been imposed on her, but also came up with her own strategy. All of this happened because Celine never truly accepted Rumi as she was, and that created a complicated, distant relationship. But it took the revelation of the leader's secret for Rumi to finally understand her own role as a hunter. This detail suggests that the movie left a huge opening for a sequel. We can easily imagine future stories where Rumi has to face the consequences of her decisions, balance humans and demons, and maybe even face the temptation of finally trying to conjure the Golden Hoon Moon, this time with more knowledge and maturity. And beyond that, could this create new problems for the hunters? At the end of the day, all of these clues and loopholes show that the Huntrix universe is much more complex and unpredictable than it seems. Characters who appeared to be lost can return, choices that looked final can be reversed, and every action carries consequences that ripple across multiple worlds.